Hello, I'm Tevin Gray, owner and operator here of Keepers of the Garden, Corpus Christi, Texas. So one way that we're really able to maximize our growing space here is using our vertical space. We are adding our different layers of plants, and we have our more of our canopy areas and our lower shrubby areas. Is really providing these beautiful microclimates that really benefit us in our summer with our high heat and providing shade. So that's really useful for us. As we get into here is where you'll notice the mix of the different levels of plants. So the higher growing plants and their seasonal foods kind of mixed in along with the food producing trees. These are moringa trees. They call it the miracle tree because it has so many uses. You can eat the greens, the leaves, the flowers, the roots, the seed pods. Everything on this plant is edible or usable in some form or fashion. The flowers are usually dried and made into a tea. The greens are really high in plant protein. I mean, they're just extremely fast growers, and they just throw shade so quickly. That's usually what we do is we plant them in areas we know we need shade because we know within the year we're going to have shade. It's just such a resilient tree that it doesn't really mind if it dies to the ground. It'll just sprout out the side. So that's why we love this. It's just resilient. It's the resiliency we love. This is another tree. It's a Mexican olive, and it isn't one that is necessarily edible. It does have medicinal values, but it was originally here for a shade tree because it does get so intense here. We try to focus on plants that have multiple uses. So if it does produce fruit, that's great, but if the shade is sometimes almost just as valuable. We have white and red mulberries out there, Texas peaches, fig trees, valley lemons and limes, grapefruits. We have elderberries. We have Texas persimmons and plums. There's pomegranates. You know, there's just a large list of things. These are Turk's cap. They're like miniature apples. Not only do they have edible flowers, they have edible fruit, and then the leaves, right now you can't tell, but when they get into spring and they get about this big, they can be eaten raw or cooked. So it's a great edible plant, but also a native plant. So the animals love this plant, the birds love this plant. This is Texas sage. It does have medicinal uses. So traditionally the leaves will be saved and made into a tea. So these are Barbados cherries. And we're really loving these plants because, as you see, they have not minded the cold. These are native to subtropical and tropical areas, and they produce heavily these little red berries that are edible. And then this area is kind of a mixture of native plants and non-native plants, but we have like beach roses. This is a kefir lime. So this is a natal plum. These are a native plant here that do produce a little edible fruit on there. It's edible and it's a great ground cover. This is another one. These are called cocoa plums, another native plant to the area. Similar to the natal plum, the cocoa plum has this little edible fruit that's it's real sweet and is also a great food source for the local animals as well. We really, try to focus on these kind of unique foods that you wouldn't typically find at your local farmer's market, but things that we know are going to grow really well. Things like, amaranth, which is a fantastic superfood or grain that's been grown here for hundreds of years. Okra, melons, tons of different types of herbs, all kinds of flowers just kind of thrive here at different times of the year. Broccoli, Italian kale, Brussels sprouts. Our productive time of year is like our cool weather season. So we only have fall and winter to plant all of these type of crops. So the brassicas and the seasonal crops that most people grow in the summer, we grow in the winter because it's the only time we get a break from the heat. We like to let things grow wild here. So you'll notice we have a lot of wild edibles. This is called henbit. And it is a really delicious wild edible that you can eat raw or cooked. We essentially leave this stuff as a natural cover crop. So we let everything go to seed here. Everything is recycled and reused, and we get amazing little patches like this that not only are they edible, but it's amazing cover crop that we leave. They're helping keep our soil covered and providing insulation for the plants around it. This is a patch of, it's the henbit, but mixed in, there's peanuts. Peanuts grow really well here. They just don't like the cold. So we thought they were going to not make it, but the henbit and the other foliage protected them. It insulated them just enough that they survived the winter. Things like sweet potatoes grow fantastically here in this kind of subtropical area. This is a native passion vine. So it produces these small little passion fruits that are very similar in taste and texture to your traditional passion fruit, but in a native variety, and it's a lot smaller. So every year we're constantly planting new trees and more food out there and expanding the food forest, and over the years really being able to see how much food it's produced is awesome.